interested in recreating this pink and white dip design? Then keep watching. Hi, my name is Tia. Welcome to my channel. If you're returning, welcome back. Any of the products you see in today's video can be purchased from naildipstudio.com. So, in this video today, I am going to show you how I created this pink and white, the beloved, the classic pink and white overlay using dip powder. Yes, you can do it using dip powder. So real quick, we have a couple of things that we need to do before we get into the actual dip tutorial. I'm going to show you how I do my manicure and repair a couple of my chipped nails. So right here, I'm just starting with a dry manicure. I'm going to push back my cuticles using my cuticle pusher. And that's going to help me sort of remove any of that, any of the cuticle, any of the maybe additional product that may have been left over from the soak off process. I'm now going to use my cuticle scraper to help further assist me in removing that film, pushing back those cuticles, and really helping in the prep, because ideally you want to make sure that you don't have any cuticle, any leftover product that may actually prevent your new application, your new overlay, from actually adhering to the nail plate. And so right here, you just see that I'm actually just working the scraper to help aid in lifting up, being ever so gentle to my own nails. You don't want to go in too aggressively because you could actually injure yourself or cut yourself, and that's not the goal here. I just wanted to show you how I go about actually doing my dry manicure when it comes to pushing back and removing the cuticle. Now that we've done all of that, we've removed and pushed back our cuticles, we've done all the trimming, let's jump into actually removing any leftover products that we may have before we apply our tips. So I'm going to apply a couple of tips to my thumbs. As you can see in the previous shot, I damaged both corners, and so I'm just going to utilize these sort of clear tips. They are already shaped in like that coffin tapered look, and that's a look that I prefer. So I'm going to grab step number 2 and my e-file, and I'm just going to basically provide or create some texture on the back side of the nail tip. And the reason for that is because I want the adhesive, the base coat that I'm going to be using, that you also use for your dip powder, to basically create and seek into those grooves to help better connect that nail tip to my actual nail. And so that's what you see me doing here, just grabbing the step number 2 from the PCs Liquid Set and applying that to the inside of the nail tip. And as you can see right there, I sort of scraped off more product than normal, just because I want to make sure that I have enough of the adhesive there to help really bond that tip to my nail. And I'm applying pressure, but not a lot of pressure. Okay. So now I'm going to grab my nail clipper, and I'm going to clip that nail. Initially, I do a first pass, and then what I then like to do is move on to the next finger, and then I'm going to apply and do the same steps. But then you're going to see me go back in and cut it a little closer to the actual natural nail. And I do that because I want to make sure that lengthwise they're on the same scale. I don't want really one nail longer than the other. I kind of want to make sure that they're basically in the same sort of, like they're cousins, not necessarily identical sisters, but like cousins. So you'll see me do that. Now that that's all done, we're going to go into the shaping aspect. And part of the goal here, which is always, in my opinion, the goal should be pre-shaping and pre-filing. You want to pre-shape and pre-file your nails at least 80% of what you sort of want your nails to be towards the end, at the end of your application. And so starting out with filing the tips and then going in and actually shaping my natural nail will be the next phase. And again, you just want to make sure you have an ideal shape of what you want your nails to look like. So for instance, if you want your nails to be square, then go ahead and shape them square. If you want them to be more of a coffin, shape them more tapered until you get your desired shape. And here's a pro tip. You want to, in some cases, you want to overshape. And what I mean by overshape, meaning if you want more of a coffined, tapered look, you want to make your nails skinny enough and tapered enough to where you can expand those nails, because in some cases, what will happen is if you make your nails look like what, let me see, how am I saying this? If you don't over shape your nails, in some cases you'll have to overshape them at the end, if that makes sense. Like if you want your nails tapered, it's better to make it tapered and really like exaggerated, because when you add the product, it's going to add width, it's going to add length in some cases to your nail, and you don't want it to be too bulky. You essentially don't want to go back to where you started. You kind of want to start and over accentuate what the shape should look like so that you get the final result once you start building out the product. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense to what I'm saying. So again, just make sure that you're shaping your nails and you have that desired picture in mind of what you want your nails to look like. And I would honestly say take one of your tips and practice on those tips. Take a tip that is just straight, that is maybe not as tapered, so that you can actually start to train and learn how to shape your nails based on what you sort of want, okay? So hopefully that made sense. So next I want to move into the clear coat. And as you know, I love creating and building my apex. I love creating that C curve, however you want to sort of classify it. And I don't go in too heavily with my my half dip or my foundational dip. I usually just start midpoint, and I know where my sort of weak point is with my nails, and so I usually start there. So again, you want to start with step number 1, which is the primer, and that's going to help dehydrate your nails. If you don't have a primer, then use alcohol, and I would say at least wipe your nails twice with alcohol, let that settle, and then move into step number 2, which is your base coat. So right here you see me taking the base coat, starting midpoint, bringing it down, sweeping the free edge, and then dipping my nail into the clear powder. Again, that's going to help create that apex. If you have a flat nail, if you have a concave nail where your nail plate sort of dips in, then you may want to go in with 2 of those layers, just to help build the bridge that you need to help start to create that curvature. If your nail is more so like mine, where you have a slight curve, you don't have to go in as aggressive. You can go in with just 1 layer and then proceed to your base, your color of choice. But if you actually have indentation, or if your nail is inverted where you have like that swoop inward, then you probably want to add 2 layers on top of that just to pull things up, okay? Now what I want to take you into are these sort of travel jars, and I got these from the Dollar Tree. We're going to customize our pink shade and make this sort of translucent, transparent pink that is basically more in line with my natural nail plate. And I'm going to show you how to use that, how to do that, and how to use the little tiny little containers like this, the little jars you get from the Dollar Tree, dollar store, something like that, but they come in handy. So I'm using the shade Tickled Pink, which is NDS014 if you're interested on my website. I'm also going to be using the NDS Clear, and for the white, I'm going to be using Snohh, and that's NDS002, also available on the website. So what we're going to do is take this clear travel container, and that's going to be our mixing pot. Just grabbing a regular spoon, and what you want to do, I would say, is you want to make sure that you're testing the ratio so that you're truing up the color to best match your natural nail plate, right? And nail color, rather, nail color. So if you know that your nail color is more so on the darker side, then you might want to go with like a hot pink and dilute that. But you need to start with some type of pink if you want. Now, if you have a brown or tan nail plate or nail color, then I can show you in another video how to utilize a tan shade and get the same results. But basically what you want to do is you want to go like 3 parts clear, 1 part pink, so that you're basically diluting. The pink is not as bold, okay? And as you can see here, I'm going to play around with it a little bit because it's not quite there, and you want to tweak as you go. So if you're adding more clear, then you have to add, if you're adding more clear to make it more transparent, good. If you've added too much clear, then I want you to add more pink. And you'll see me go through that. And then I actually have nail displays that I test on. So you could utilize that as well, just to make sure that you're getting the shade that you're looking for. And right now it doesn't look like much, but as I'm putting that clear shade onto the actual nail display, I'm looking to see how that shade will complement my natural color of my nail. And as you can see, I need a little bit more pink. So you'll see me go through and tweak this before I sort of get into the dip video. But I wanted to show you this part and not cut it out, because so many people have different variations of dip powder. And yes, you can customize your dip powder and use it for other projects, like to create pink and white, to create tan and white, to create just a variety of options. Don't limit yourself. Let's be creative here. But you can do that, but I want to show you how. And so I'm not cutting out a lot of these steps. Again, it's just going to be clear and your color of choice, and basically just tweaking it so that you get your desired shade. And see, I'm really focusing on looking at what the shade looks like on the back end of the nail plate. I'm sorry, of the nail display. So that pink shade that I'm looking at on the back side, that's the determining shade, because that's the shade that's going to let me know when I go to apply it to my natural nails whether or not it's actually going to pay off and look right. So again, I'm just playing around with the color, but I wanted to show you this part. Now that we've customized our pink shade, we're going to start with the first layer. And you're going to start in the opposite way that we normally do. We're going to use our natural smile line, if you have it, and start painting backwards towards the cuticle. And then we're going to flip our finger over and start painting in the common direction going downward. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that the nail real estate that I have, I don't have a lot of real estate, but I want to paint backwards so that I can start to create the actual smile. Okay, and that's what you're seeing me do. Okay, I'm going to repeat that a couple of times throughout this process, but again, you're going to start right there where my nail starts to the free edge starts to separate from the actual nail plate. I'm going to use that as my base point, and I'm going to paint backwards, and then I'm going to turn the nail over and start painting in a downward motion, just so that I can cover that entire nail. This is going to save you so much time on the back end, and especially if you don't have a what is that, like the dip dish where you can go in and actually put your finger in at a certain angle and create that smile line. This is going to help aid in that, in my opinion. And it was a lot easier, just going through this process and getting that line to be right where I wanted it. And I like to use my actual nail plate as the guide versus me sort of using the guide in an artificial way. So hopefully this makes sense to you as you continue to watch this video. So now let's move into our second layer. And our second layer, we're going to we're going to repeat the same steps, but this time I'm going to grab my my metal plate that I use to actually help aid in carving out the sort of pink. And if you've ever had pink and white done, you've seen this plate many times. It's just basically a pink and white manicure plate that allows us to cut the acrylic and give us sort of precision. So think of it like a cookie cutter, like if you were to take cookie dough and put that little tool into the cookie dough, that plate in. Well, this is the same thing. And so basically I'm going to grab that plate and I'm going to use that plate to actually help shape that pink so that I don't have to do that much work. And again, this probably costs maybe $5 off of Amazon, but it's worth it. So if you're interested, I'll link at the bottom where I got this plate from off of Amazon, but it's a great tool to have if you are interested in doing pink and white. Again, this will help you with the carving, molding, and shaping of that pink, because you want to use that before it actually settles. It helps to really carve that out for you, and you'll see me use it throughout, specifically in this particular phase of the video. I don't necessarily like using it, so I attempted to use it, dip the whole nail and then scrape off the bottom, and what you find is that a lot of the product really stuck to the back of the plate, and it took me a minute to get it off, and so I didn't like that. So I prefer to use it this way. And as you can see, I'm using the tool to assist me in making those peaks on either side so that I can scrape that and push that acrylic up, creating the peaks and the points that I want to have for my white, but then also to carving out, molding out, and forming that roundness that I want at the sort of edge of my nail. Now let's move into the third layer of the pink. And again, we're just going to repeat the steps that we've already, I've already showed you in layer 1 and layer 2, but we're just going to really focus now on shaping. Again, you want to also make sure that you are counting the layers that you've put on, because for every one layer that you put on of pink, you have to put one layer of white as well, okay? So it has to be a 1-to-1. And that's why I specifically wanted to call out what layers we were sort of, you know, at that mile marker, if you will, layer marker, because it's important. If you have 3 layers of pink, you have to have 3 layers of white, or else your nails are going to be uneven. And when you go to file, when you go to buff, it's just not going to settle right. And you'll have to do a little bit more work, and you don't want to do that. So again, still utilizing the same technique, but if you notice now, I'm not starting at my in the opposite direction. I'm starting at the top of the nail. I'm moving my way down. Why? Because we've already built our platform. Okay, when you start the platform, you want to go in the opposite direction a couple of times just to start to get those layers on. But once you've had those layers, now you have a guide, and you can go down, and you know not to go past that point, past that free edge. And if you did, no worries. We're going to take that tool that we have right here, our pink and white manicure tool, and we're going to use that to help carve, to help shape, to help mold that pink, so that we don't have that much work to do on the back end. We will have to file, we will have to shape that pink before we move into the process of doing our white. But I'll get to that, but I want to make sure that you understand why I'm sort of doing it the way that I'm doing it. This is the why. You want to make sure that you just have, again, enough product there, but then also too that the foundation is solid, because you want to mimic that classic pink and white overlay. So if you're someone who is on the go, you know you're going to be gone for, I don't know, maybe like a month, maybe for work, or maybe you just have a hectic schedule, and you won't have the time to go back and forth doing your nails. This is that set that I used to love wearing. I probably wore pink and white maybe for like 10 years straight. Like that was my go-to, because I knew that even when my nails grew out, it was not going to look horrific. Like, oh my God, you have that new growth, because I would color match that pink to the exact, if not dead spot on shade of my natural nail plate, or natural nail color, so that when my nails would grow out, you couldn't tell. It wasn't a big eyesore. Like I could tell, but someone who's just sort of casually going by, they wouldn't be able to see that. So again, if you're someone who's looking for versatility, you have a couple of pink shades, and you want to play around with this, definitely check this out. Again, if you want to purchase any of the products that you see here, head over to naildipstudio.com. Okay, so now that we're done with our third layer, let's go into shaping. One of the things I want to make sure that you do is that you wait at least 5 minutes before you start shaping the pink. And you want to shape the pink using a 180, 200, 220, 240 nail file. And the reason for that is because you don't want anything too abrasive. Anything really below 180, 150, really 150 will be too harsh, and it's going to take off too much product. You want to use something that's a softer grit nail file, because again, we're not trying to overly shape this, but we're just trying to help smooth out any texture that we may have in and around that sort of curvature, that curvature line, that curvature space. We want to make sure that we're shaping, we're filing that down, we're buffing that out, and we're going to use that as a guide, because again, we're about to now move into dipping our finger to the white, into the white. And I'm not using the bond just yet because I'm not ready for it. And I'll show you later on in the video where we would use the bond. But I'm not using the bond specifically in this particular step because I don't want to crystallize my brush. And sometimes when we use that bond can definitely harden your brush if you're not washing your hands correctly. Okay, so we've gone through that. Now let's jump into our first layer of white. Okay, dust everything off. Boom. Grab step number 2. We're still using step number 2. We've used step number 2 a lot thus far, and it's really because it's versatile. You can use it to apply your nails, to set your base powder with, and also to to help in this particular process. So we using that free edge space that we have there on our nail, we're using that to apply base number 2. Okay, and we're going to dip our finger into the white. But notice I held my finger in that white for about 10 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds. I didn't speed up the video. I didn't cut it out. I'm moving directly into the next finger. I want to give you real time, the technique that I actually use from the comforts of my home. And don't worry if you get a little bit of the white on the pink, we'll buff and file that off. Right now, we're trying to seal the gap, create the smile lines using that white shade that I have, and then we're tapping off the extra, and as you can see, it's starting to take shape. Don't worry if you get a little bit of powder, a little bit of the product on the side of your nails. You will get that. You can just pluck that off towards the end. Okay, and if you pluck it off too soon, I think the next nail, you'll see that I plucked it off too soon. It wasn't quite settled. It was still wet underneath, and I actually ended up removing that product. And I'm going to show you, if that happens to you, how to repair it. But you really just want to make sure that you make the molding of the pink. That's what's going to aid in making sure that the white settles and sits correctly on the nail plate. Now that we've done our first layer of white, let's move into the second layer. And we're going to, again, still using step number 2, NDS base coat. and we're just going to apply thin layers. Again, you want to make sure that you are brushing off as much as the product that you can get off of the bristles, because remember, there's product on the stem, and as you hold the stem in your hand, gravity will take over, pulling that product down that you have on the stem to the actual brush. And you don't want to have too much product on there, because then you'll create, you know, just like bubbles and ripples and all kinds of stuff when you have too much product. So you want to make sure that you're applying a thin layer of the base coat, dipping your finger at an angle into your white powder, letting that finger sit in that powder for about 10 seconds, because you really want the powder and the liquid to create that relationship, to bond, to marry. And if you don't do that, it's just not going to look right. So again, count to 10, stick your finger into your powder, count to 10. When you pull your finger out, tap off the extra powder, but do not use the brush just yet, because I like to give myself a little bit of time, you know, maybe a minute or so before I actually dust off everything. So I find that when I complete one hand in its entirety, that's when I go back and I dust everything off, but not beforehand. Okay. And this is the spot where I wanted to show you where I'm actually going to take the white and pluck off a little piece of the pink and white that I'm actually using in the video to show you how to repair that white, because again, I tried to pluck it off before it was actually dry. Excuse me. And in the process of doing that, I created a little hole. So as you can see, that's the little hole right there. And I'm basically taking some of the step number 2, putting my finger back into the powder and just allowing the powder to settle into my onto my nail. And I'll just, you know, instead of messing with it again, because I know that it's not dry, because I already made that mistake, not doing it again, I'll just move on to the next finger. But I will pluck off the extra powder and the extra product that I have on the side of my nail and on my skin off towards the end. But I won't do that until it's time for me to actually start doing the shaping. Now let's move into our third layer of white, and this will be realistically the last layer that we use right before we start the shaping and filing process. Again, starting off with a very thin layer, using step number 2 and applying step number 2 to our nail to create that pink and white classic overlay set. Now that we've completed our third layer, let's jump into the bond, applying the bond, and also pre-filing, because we're going to do some pre-filing today on this particular video. So I'm applying step number 3, which is the bond, and I'm going to put that all over my nails and sweep it across the free edge. We apply product to our free edge, so we need to make sure that we apply the bond as well. And one of the things you want to make sure that you do when you're going through the filing process is that, again, that you're not using a nail file that is too harsh. And number 2, you don't want to use a nail file that leaves a color residue on the nails. And sometimes, you think, oh, it's so pretty, it has flowers, it has this, it has that. Well, all of those designs that you may see on the nail file have dye associated with them. And sometimes when you're filing your nails, you can get that dye can transfer from the nail file onto the nail. And because you've now filed it into the nail and buffed it into the nail, it is a part of the nail and you might not be able to get that stain out. So that's why I often use light colored nail files, just so that I don't have to worry about that tint transferring. And again, using my 180 nail file, I'm using that to actually help to shape and to mold my nails so that I can move on to step number 4, because I can't move on to step number 4 until I actually get the desired shape that I'm looking for and the desired look that I'm going for. When I used to do pink and white or wore pink and white, I never liked a lot of the pink. Like, I didn't like that big, the opposite. I didn't like a big, like, sort of swoosh of white. I never liked that. I preferred always having a very, sort of minimal amount of white on the nail, because that's just my preference. Some people like a thick white sort of smile line. I don't. So because I like something that's a little bit in between being thick and being too thin, this is basically how I always used to wear my nails. And if you notice here, I'm just shaping and filing and shaping and filing. I already did the pre-shaping, so I don't have to do a lot of shaping on the back end. But remember, we only used 3.5 layers. And if anybody, if you're new to my channel, I always prefer to have somewhere around 4 to 5 layers of dip powder, preferably 5, because I realized that I need some more structure. I need some reinforcement. And so that's why I always opt for more layers. Now, right here, I'm showing you how I'm shaping my nails. I'm shaping them in a, in a downward motion, using that 180 side, making sure that I'm not filing off too much of the product. But I zoomed in because I just wanted to show you what that looks like. Okay, I'm taking my time going around the cuticle, going around the free edge, and making sure that that nail is on point. Because guess what? We're going to add 2 layers of clear on top of this to give me my sort of desired 5 layers. And I do that for a couple of reasons. Number 1, I want to make sure that my pink and my white are set, that I'm in love with the design and the actual carving of the 2 points, making sure that they really connect. But then number 2, I'm also trying to make sure that once I apply that clear, any imperfections that I may have on that pink and or on that white, I can't go back and fix, because I've now encapsulated it with the clear. So you can't do anything. Once that clear is on top, it's on top. So that's why I'm really paying close attention to the way that my white is looking and making sure that I'm not over filing anything off, because again, once I file that, once I put that clear on top, I can't make any changes. Let's fix this white. Now, as I was doing my filing and stuff, and you will, again, probably be hit with the same issue, but as I started doing my filing, I noticed that one of my nails, or a couple of my nails, they just didn't have the smile line that I wanted. And so I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to actually fix that. You have two options. The first option would be you could take some acrylic paint or nail polish or even gel polish and actually just go behind and sort of fix any imperfections that you see on your nail. And I'm going to use acrylic paint to actually go in and fix that with a small detailing brush, just making sure that I really carve out that line, because you can see here it's a little wonky, and I just want to carve that out, and again let that settle for about a minute or two. So you don't want anything too thick, but you want to give your finger enough time to absorb the white, to dry the white, so that you can put your top coat on top of that white, because you're encapsulating that shade with the clear. And if you don't want to re-dip your nails, again, this is an excellent way to fix any corrections that you may have. Just get some get some white acrylic powder. Slow it down, Tia. Get some white acrylic paint from Walmart, from the craft store, from Target, and use that. Make sure you just have a little bowl on the side with some water in it, so that you can actually clean off your brush, and it can help you carve out the way you want your nails to be. If you want higher peaks, you can make them higher. If you want lower peaks, you can make them lower. But this is a way of just cleaning up and carving out that white a little bit. Now, if you want to do and go back into the the white, you can do that if you want to. And I'll show you that in the next clip. So now that we've cleaned up our white smile lines using our acrylic paint, we can actually go in with step number 2. We're still on step number 2, which is the base coat. And we're going to apply that to the nail. And then once we've applied that to the nail, we're going to also dip our nails in some clear. And we're going to do 2 layers of the clear because I like to have 5 layers. But again, we're going to just take that base coat, step number 2. We're going to apply it to our nails, yes, over top of the acrylic paint. We're going to sweep the free edge with the base coat, and we're going to now dip our nails into the clear powder so that we can start to encapsulate those shades, okay? We want to make sure that we seal the deal. We don't want any issues with all of that work we put in to really create the pink and white, the perfect pink and white overlay set. So we don't want to mess up anything. So we want to make sure that we're encapsulating that, okay? This will be the first layer of the clear powder. And then we're going to add one more layer, but it's going to come with a trick. We're going to add the second layer of clear powder in the next clip coming up, but I'm going to show you another like little pro tip that you can use. So now that we're into the second part of fixing the whites, and I want to show you how you can actually fix the whites without adding and utilizing the acrylic paint. So if you want to, you can actually take the base coat, step number 2, and sweep it across your whites. So I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. As you can see, I took some of that base coat off, and I am taking my time sweeping it specifically and focusing on the white and that free edge, making sure that I'm swooping it up into those points, swooping the other side, making sure that I'm getting those points and applying product there. I am going to now dip my nail into the white, let it sit there for a second, just because, again, I want to make sure that my white is really white. I want to make sure that my smile lines are on point. I don't want any wiggly lines. I don't want any disjointed lines. I want to make sure that everything is sitting nice and pretty. If I have any powder, any product on the side, while it's still wet and bendable, I'm going to mold it and push it into the place that I want it to be versus having it just sit out there all willy-nilly and not focus. And then I'm going to grab the back end of my cuticle pusher, and I'm going to use that tool to help me mold and, again, add further definition into my smile lines as well, okay? So you just want to continue to like play around, and you probably have tools on your nail station that you can actually use for multiple ways. You don't just have to use it then that one way that they basically have instructed you to use it. You can use it in a couple of different ways. And again, this is just me cleaning up my the whites, fixing the whites and making sure that I get the whitest whites, because I really like for my tips to be white. And some of you may have experienced this. I don't like putting my gel polish over top of my pink and white, because if you have dark or dyed hair like myself, then you know over time gel, basically within a week you can get your nails done on a Saturday, and by the following Saturday your nails are either a light purple, brown, gray, so on and so forth. Well, the dip top coat doesn't do any of that. It doesn't change. There's no dye transfer. You don't have those issues, which is why I love doing dip. And again, being able to perfect this pink and white look was really a challenge, but I was able to do it. So I want to make sure that I showed my audience what you can do with your NDS liquid set. And you can see right here, those whites are really white, and you can see the difference between the fixed white and the, sort of just straight non-fixed white. It's not the same. It's just not the same. Let's make sure we dust everything off before we move into the next section, which will be the final dip layer of clear powder, where we are going to be sealing all of that work that we've just done, we've just completed. I like to play around with my whites because I really like my whites to be extremely white. And if you remember going back, a few frames, that you saw the difference between, just the plain white, and that was me sort of touching my hair, and it gives you that dull look versus, using the alcohol, wiping everything down, and then going in and making sure that that white is actually white. I wanted to show you that difference because, again, a lot of us that have dyed hair, and that dye transfers, we put oil, you put serums, you put all this stuff on your hair, and that dye transfers to your nails. Well, that's that dullness that you get. And I wanted to show you what it looks like when your nails have been sealed a couple of times with that clear powder. You're not going to get that dull, dingy look. You're going to get that bright white look, especially because we're not using products that absorb dyes. They've actually repelled them. So again, I hope this was, really helpful in terms of like the two different techniques in terms of cleaning up and fixing any of your whites associated with your pink and white set, because you just want to make sure that you are keeping everything very crisp, very natural looking. And this is, that set that's going to last you the 3 to 4 weeks, because you don't have to keep coming back, and you can actually backfill this set if you need to. So if you need to do a fill-in, you already have your customized color. Don't let that color go to waste. Use that to fill in your nails. And if you need a fill-in backfill video, I can show you how to do that. I think I have a video already on my channel, but if not, I'll let this grow out for a little bit, and then I'll show you how to do a backfill using that customized color that we use to create the pink for our pink and white set. Do you see the difference? Do you see it? Like, it's there. You see the difference. just by cleaning up, filing and cleaning up that white and then adding another layer of the white and encapsulating that, it gives you a beautiful pink and white overlay. It is not dingy, it is not flat. And again, the white, you can see that I'm using my white. I purposely put my hand in my hair over and over and over and over and over again, just so that you can sort of see what happens when that serum, those oils, that dye, it's going to get on your hand. So now we're going to jump into the filing and the buffing. And again, not doing anything that you haven't seen already. Using my 180 grit file, and I'm using it to shape it, go around the cuticle, clean up those free edge, the free edge and the side walls, and also to making sure that I'm removing any bulk, which is why I'm sort of filing in a downward motion. And you will see me go to the tip and make sure that I file down some, because again, I don't want it too bulky, but I do want to make sure that that shape is there. And that's the biggest thing for me, is just making sure that the shape is there. Utilize your thumb as a stand to help stimulate, guide, and steady that finger. And you can do that for all fingers if you want. If you can't do that, use a surface to stabilize your finger so that you can actually shape and really get control of your finger, so that it's not wobbling all over the place. Because again, you're just trying to make sure that that shape is really nice and really professional looking. And part of that is utilizing your hand, the weight of your finger against a stronger finger, which, your thumb, to really balance the two and shape. Okay. Hopefully that made sense, right? And if you need to tuck some skin down or move some skin out of the way just so that you can get a nicer and a smoother outline, do that. That's okay. It's your finger. You don't have to don't apply all this pressure. I'm not overly filing anything. I'm not cutting myself, and I'm not being too aggressive because I'm using that 180. That 180 grit will give you enough, it allows you to take off enough product without taking off too much. It gives you and it aids in your buffing process too, because you don't have a lot of harsh and aggressive and abrasive lines or texture that you have to buff out, because it's not as harsh. So you definitely want to make sure that you're looking at that. Now this step is extra, but I'm going to take my e-file, and I'm going to use my diamond point grip to actually shape underneath my nails. And I'm not going in at a high rate of speed. This is an optional step. If you don't have an e-file, you can actually use the corners of your nail file to actually create and smooth out any texture that you have underneath that free edge. But I'm just trying to clean that up before I sort of move forward. Again, if you feel comfortable using the another file or another grit, you can do that under your free edge if you don't want to use that pointy one, because sometimes some people don't want to use that. And you can actually achieve the same technique using the normal nail bit under your nail. So now that we've filed, now that we've shaved, now that we've buffed our hands, it's important that you actually get up to wash your hands. So please go wash your hands with soap and water. And once you finish washing your hands, I like to go in with one more step and just take some alcohol and wipe off my nails just to ensure that I'm getting off all of that bond. If you are someone who has struggled with your top coat, actual bristle brush crystallizing and hardening on you, that's because you still have bond on your nail and or maybe even on your skin, and because you haven't technically gotten all of that off, it's going to harden that brush once it makes contact. So as a preventative measure, I just like to go in with a lint-free wipe and wipe my nails off one last time just to make sure that I got everything off of my fingers before I go and apply step number 4, which is the top coat. So that's what you see me doing right now. It's just grabbing everything, grabbing the lint-free wipe and utilizing my alcohol to wipe off my nail, to wipe off my fingers. And right here, I'm just checking for texture just to make sure that I got everything off, okay? So I'm going to grab step number 4, which is the top coat, and I'm going to apply 2 layers. I'm going to apply the first layer, allowing about a minute to pass before, a minute or 2 to pass before I apply the second layer. And then I'm going to allow my nails to dry. And I'm going to allow my nails to dry for at least 10 to 15 minutes. And I don't want you to put your nails in front of a fan. I don't want you doing a lot of movement. I want you just to keep your nails flat on the surface and allow them to dry. Once you allow your nails to dry, you're going to have a beautiful, long-lasting pink and white overlay set that looks better, in my opinion, than some of the salon services that I've seen out here. Some of them have been horrific. Ew. But this is like amazing. You will actually be proud of yourself, and I'm never going back to the salon. So if you're interested, again, in any of the products that you've seen and you're thinking about purchasing, some of the products today, please head over to naildipstudio.com where you can actually purchase these products. And I will have a link to the products on my website in the description. As always, thanks for watching. I hope this video was informative. I hope you've learned something. And again, until next time, keep dipping. Bye.